Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the committee. I would like to call the House Committee on Agriculture to order today. We appreciate your attendance here and look forward to a good discussion on this year's version of the North Carolina Farm Act. Senator Jackson and Senator Newton, welcome to House Ag. We'd like to thank our Sergeant at Arms, Joe Cook, Nina Slage, Terry McGraw, and Bill Riley. Thank you so much, fellas, for what you do. We have a great team of pages that are here with us today. Welcome to the House Agriculture Committee, and we hope you have an interesting experience here with us. We have Catherine Davenport. If you would stand, please. Representative Ben Moss. Isaiah Hernandez, Representative Howard Penny. Adria Hood, Speaker Tim Moore, Caroline Shelton, Representative Mitchell Setzer, Nathan Turney, Representative Abe Jones, Tatum Urquhart, Representative Stephen Ross, Eli McCrae, Representative Garland Pierce, and a new one's been added here, Lyman DiFlorio. How close did I get? Not too close? Okay, thank you. I reviewed with everybody else, but you came in and surprised me. We will proceed as Senator Jackson sees fit in presenting the bill. I do know that we've had folks that have signed up, and Senator Jackson, I assume that what we'll do is go through the bill item by item and then go into public comment before we go into committee discussion, if that's okay with you. This is a PCS without objection. The PCS is before us. Any objection? The PCS is before us, and Senator Jackson, you're recognized to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members. It's always a pleasure to be in House Ag. Look forward to it every year with the North Carolina Farm Act. Section 1, I'm going to go through each section and what has been added in the PCS. And some of this was added after it left the Senate, and so I might not be quite as familiar with it as some others, but if you have questions on it later on, we'll certainly get them clarified. Section 1, this section allows honey to be included for the purpose of determining PUV gross income requirement. Section 1.1, this section clarifies that a facility involved in the recycling of turkey brooder litter is included in the definition of agriculture. An amendment clarified that the recycling of litter by drying to reduce moisture is also a bona fide farm purpose. Section .12, this section reflects a merger of the North Carolina Agriculture Foundation and the North Carolina Tobacco Foundation. This is mainly purely technical to make sure the names all are changed to the North Carolina Agriculture Foundation Incorporated. Section 1.3, this section adds a 12th member to the North Carolina Board of Ag to represent the equine industry in North Carolina. Section 1.4 exempts compost from sales tax for certain qualifying farmers. Section 1.5 adds pine straw harvesting to the definition of agriculture. And Section 1.5 also adds biofuel. It was amended to also add biofuel production when performed on the farm to the definition of agriculture. Section 2 allows agricultural operations to place seasonal signs for the products in the right-of-ways. Section .2.1 slightly reduces the size of lettering required on agritourism warning signs. There will seem to be a discrepancy between the upper and lowercase lettering found on existing signs, so I guess the sign patrol czar went around, and so we're changing it to where they're all the same, and we're exempting them on agritourism signs. Section 3 clarifies the definition of property hauling vehicles to ensure vehicles used in connection with various motorsports competitions are not restricted in the use of their vehicles. This is language that I work with the Highway Patrol on, and this is basically their language, so there's no opposition there from the Highway Patrol on this particular section. Section 3.1, this is a new section that has been added since it left the Senate as well. It would grant the operator of farm equipment or machinery the same defense that is granted to the operator of a motorcycle under certain conditions. It's my understanding now, and I'm sort of getting out on a limb here on my understanding, but it's my understanding in a lot of these intersections, there is sensors in the ground that detects when a car is present. And with a motorcycle, it can't, because the motorcycle is not large enough for it to detect that presence. The same thing is happening with large farm equipment that is straddling these sensors, and they're so high off the ground, the radar that whatever is sensing there is not picking them up. So that was the reason for adding this section in there. And I'm sure we can get staff to explain it further if we need to down the road. Section 4 amends the veterinarian medical board inspection process to require clear notice of inspections, the exact details of what may be inspected, and a reasonable means of rescheduling a proposed inspection. This applies to both veterinarians and boarding kennels. Section 4.1 creates a new penalty for anyone who spills animal waste or byproducts onto a roadway and then flees the scene. This has actually been amended in this new PCS, and it removes the criminal penalties and requires reimbursement of cleanup costs in all cases where animal waste is spilled in excess of 15 pounds. Mr. Chairman and members, as we work through this Farm Act, I would recommend we go back to the Senate version and maybe add language that would exempt feathers and that type of stuff when folks are transporting from farm to farm live animals, because what we were trying to deal with was folks that were transferring dead animals, going to a rendering plant or to a landfill. And we have a company that has come in and they're making great strides in cleaning this up. And so I don't want to do anything to deter them of building a new rendering plant, which will be in excess of probably $40–50 million, and is desperately needed in our state. And so we might want to go back to the Senate language, but add in specifically that we're talking about dead animals and not live feathers or feathers from live animals or anything else that comes off of livestock being transported to and from a farm or to slaughter.
Senator Jackson, as I indicated to you in a text, we are agreeable to that.
Okay.
And so with that understanding, we'll work towards accomplishing that in the manner that you've described it. That'll be okay with us.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Section 5 encourages the State Board of Education, and remember this says encourages, to make 100% muscadine grape juice available in every public school. Section 5.1 has been added as well since it left the Senate, and it's my understanding this would make the penalty for assault with a deadly weapon on an inspector from the Sleep Products Division of the Department, or, and I guess the department is the Department of NCDA, or a poultry inspector from the Meat and Poultry Inspection Division, a Class A1 misdemeanor. This section would become effective December the 1st, 2023, and would apply to offenses committed on or after that date. Section 5.2 is another provision that has been added since it has come over to the House, would allow the Commissioner of Agriculture, with the advice and consent of the Board of Agriculture, to adopt rules related to markets operated by the department and retain current rules relating to markets for which the statutory authority was repealed in 2021. This section would also allow the Commissioner to adopt rules to set reasonable fees for calibrations and services adjustments performed by the metrology, and I probably mispronounced that, laboratory section of the Standards and Vision. This is basically just measurements, units of measurements. And I have no issue with these amendments that's been added, Mr. Chairman. Section 5.3 would correct a cross-reference to General Statute 153-340B, which was recodified in General Statute 160D-903 in 2019. Section 6 establishes the equine trail, and this would be through the Department of Cultural Resources, would be authorizing them to add the equine trail to part of the state park system. Section 7 renames the official state fruit to the muscadine grape, replacing the more Pacific scuppernong with the muscadine, which is more generically and generally used. Section 8 designates the longleaf pine as the as the emblem representing the trees of North Carolina. Section 8.1 was also added after it left the Senate, would designate the second Wednesday in November of each year as North Carolina Farmers Appreciation Day, beginning in 2024. And this is going to be handled, as I understand, through the North Carolina Grange, and they're going to be bringing in all the commodity groups and associations, Farm Bureau, NCDA, and others, and I understand that's why we're doing it in 24 instead of 23, is to get everybody on the same page and so we can do a good job at it. Section 9 makes several changes to the statutes on prescribed burning. Section 10 prohibits the use of unmanned aircraft such as drones near a forest fire, but it also, this has been added as well, and I heard about it before it left the Senate, but it wasn't time to get it changed, so it amends Section 10 to allow the official in responsible charge of management of a forest fire to give verbal consent to operation of an unmanned aerial vehicle near the forest fire. This was requested by the Fire Association, as I understand it, so that they would be able to manage and see what's going on with the fires and there wouldn't be any issues under the criminal charges of actually being there. Section 11 strengthens the statute on larceny of timber within the state. Section 11.1 states that the penalty for removal in a riparian buffer shall not exceed the value of the timber removed. Section 12 establishes a forestry services and advice fund to develop and otherwise invest in providing forestry services and advice to owners and operators of forest land. And Section 12.1 has been added also in this PCS, would clarify that a forest ranger or deputy ranger may use all necessary means to confine and extinguish a forest fire whether or not the fire occurs during a season of drought. Section 13, it allows an employee of a business to drill an irrigation well under the purview of their owner, even if they specifically do not have. And basically what this is trying to correct, in order for you to drill on your land, you can do that right now without any problem if that land is in your name, your personal name. Well, we know a lot of these farm operations are not in personal names anymore. They're in LLCs, they're in Subchapter S, they're in different forms, partnerships. So this would allow a company, a farming company, to get a permit and their employees could drill their wells for irrigation purposes only. That is the only thing we're trying to change here, is allow an operator, farm operator, to drill his own well as long as, it's his land and it's in that company name. Section 14 clarifies the previous Farm Act, which established biodigester permitting. And as I understand this, the language that is in this PCS is what both the Port Council and the industry and DEQ have agreed upon. Unless there's some change to that I'm be made aware of now, I understand they're in complete agreement. So, and I'm getting nods from the chair and staff, so that must be the proper answer. Section 15 clarifies that wetlands classified as waters of the state are restricted to waters of the United States and directs the EMC to adopt rules pursuant to this clarification. This rectifies the 2019 decoupling of the definition of wetlands by the EMC and prevents any confusion, conflict, or unpredictability that could arise by having different state and federal regulations. Basically what we're doing is we're taking this back to the way it's been for decades. I mean decades. That's the only change we're making here. So we're simply recodifying what has been 2 or more decades in the press that was said in precedent. Section 16 requires the Commission for Public Health to adopt amendments to the prefabrication permanent block panel system rules. This includes a number of specific requirements for trench width, acceptable long-term acceptance rates in gallons per square foot, and etc. Section 17 adjusts the existing broadness on wastewater systems deemed acceptable to include only the manufacturer who received that approval in their application. Also in Section 17, In the new language that is before you, it deletes a provision prohibiting the Commission for Public Health from imposing any conditions or limitations on an accepted system more restrictive than the conditions or limitations imposed on the system's innovative designation. That is what has been deleted out of the sections. And Section 18, Mr. Chairman and members, is just a severability clause and when it becomes effective. And I'll be happy to entertain questions at the right time.
Thank you, Senator Jackson, for the presentation. Members, without objection, and for the committee to get a sense of where there are public concerns, what my intentions are now. We've got 4 people that signed up to speak. Without objection, I'm going to, Senator Jackson, give each one of those 4 folks 3 minutes to point out to us and to the committee where they might have concerns, okay. And then we'll come back to the normal the discussion for the committee, if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the public comment now. We've got, and when you come to the podiums, restate your name and the organization that you represent, whether it's yourself or another organization, for the record. You don't have to take the whole 3 minutes, but we will give you up to 3 minutes. And it will be in this order. Matthew Brown, Todd Muchin, I can't pronounce that, so Todd, you know who you are, John Boyette, and Chancey Leggett, in that order. Come on up, Matthew.
Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you, Representative Dixon, for the time to come and talk. And my name is Matthew Brown. I'm from Yadkin County. Me and my family own and operate Yadkin Well Company. I'm a 4th generation well driller, 3rd generation owner of our business.
Matthew, do you represent anybody other than yourself? Do you have a title?
I'm the president of North Carolina Groundwater Association.
Thank you.
Thank
you may
you, sir.
Proceed.
I like how Senator Jackson so eloquently presented the simplistic nature of the removal of certification requirements to drill irrigation wells in our state. But I want to take that simplistic view and expound on that a minute or two for you to tell you that it is quite an art to drill a well, and we stand very strongly. All my members and over 1,200 certified drillers across this state have been blowing my phone up in the last couple of days over this potentiality of a bill coming forward that's going to remove our prestige and professionalism of being called and labeled a certified professional groundwater contractor. Our industry's fought hard for recognition over many decades to achieve certification. And just a couple of these things come to the top is, number one, who's responsible? As the farm owner, as the landowner, who's responsible if this well is not drilled properly? Our number one concern is health and well-being of our citizens. That's the reason of certification. We don't get certified to put it on a banner. We get certified so that we know those people that install these wells. When that water comes out the tap, our people can be safe. They can be healthy. They have no concern about what's going to be in that water. Just the same as we're going to irrigate crops and plants and things, we want to make sure that water's safe, that what we're irrigating those crops with, because that's going to eventually allow them to grow properly. Two is aquifer protection. Wells put in the eastern part of our state can commingle aquifers. That's against the rule book to commingle water. Does an uncertified or a driller you hire at the flea market that can work for the farm know those things? We can have saltwater intrusion that's irreversible. Once the water in the ground's messed up, folks, you can't just fix it. There's no magic button. It's a precious resource of this state, probably the most precious that we have. PFAS, well, you've heard about that. Cape Fear Basin is loaded with it. Towns and municipalities and counties are looking at drilling wells and coming off of the rivers because of the level of contamination and health concern. We don't want fly-by-night drillers and well-intended farmers, which I understand, I get it. We're all behind in our business right now. We're behind. We can't get there as quick as we should, but well intentions have ruined a lot of things. and some of my other colleagues will speak more, but I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Matthew. Todd? And John Boyette will be up next.
Good afternoon, Representative Dixon. My name is Todd Minch, and I represent the North Carolina Well Contractor Certification Commission. So that's the commission that certifies the well contractors in this state to drill wells. Basically, to break it down, we have 4 classes of drilling license in this state. There's A, B, C, and D. A is all-inclusive, you can do everything, and down to a D, which is just a pump installer. What Senator Jackson is proposing is to have someone with no certification install irrigation wells on properties without any restrictions. They probably won't abide by any of the setbacks, whether most of these farmlands are in floodplains, and whether or not they'll have proper seals and casing seals so that contaminants, once that land floods, cannot get down the well and pollute the aquifer and the surrounding aquifers. As Matthew said, they're all interconnected, and drilling through more than one aquifer is going to cross-contaminate them and make a large hazard. Many of these farms are rural, but they probably have subsidiary farmhouses that are on wells and neighbors that are on wells, and there's a large possibility that we can get cross-contamination by allowing a haphazard farmhand to drill a well. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boyette?
Thank you for the opportunity to address this committee. My name is John Boyette, owner of Boyette Well and Septic in Wilson, North Carolina. I also represent, I'm a sitting board member on the National Groundwater, past president of North Carolina Groundwater Association, and the president of the Groundwater Foundation. I've been to Raleigh several times to lobby during our time of getting certification. It started back in '97. Buster Dillinger spent countless hours out here trying to get professionalism for us to go from well diggers to practicing groundwater professionals. This was a long 3-year process, but it made our industry a much better industry. People were enthralled in what it meant to drill a well and how to protect the groundwater of this state. With what Senator Jackson has proposed, anyone would be able to go out there, and you've heard them speak about interconnecting aquifers. I know an instance in a subdivision where an uncertified well driller down at the coast mixed a saltwater aquifer with a freshwater aquifer. It destroyed everybody's well in the whole subdivision because of his mistake in drilling. Drilling needs to be, there needs to be oversight. Not